Welcome to another episode of Rhythmatics TV. I am glad to welcome Kelly Peters, expert in behavioral economics. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. Well, we know that there's been a lot of discussion regarding behavioral economics. Where does it come from?
It's such a fascinating field. In some ways, we can look back at the philosophers like Aristotle. Behavioral economics is really the study of how do we make decisions. And so it's an evolution of this important question of how do we make our decisions, what job we're going to take, where we're going to live, how do we make our choices? And it turns out there's a science behind that. And so this field of decision science has quietly been studying how we think. But it wasn't really until the 2000s when scholars like Cass Sunstein and Richard Thaler started to look at what does this field say and how can it help organizations like governments make better policies, given that we now have a much better understanding of how people make decisions.
So it started responding special needs. Which needs?
Well, one of the areas where behavioral economics really flourished as a field is in understanding how governments can be more effective. You see, when we think about traditional economics assumes that everybody is very rational, that every time we're going to make a choice, we're going to do this exhaustive search of all of the information, that our emotions won't get in the way of a good decision, and that will be very consistent between what we say we want to do and what we actually do. And so once we realize that that's actually not the case, it becomes a new way for governments to become more effective, but also for companies to become more effective at how they're helping their customers become happier and healthier and wiser.
How does decision-making affect the markets?
So decision-making affects us in several ways. Like in terms of the markets, we need to ensure that investors are making the decisions that are in their best interest. But unfortunately, what we all see is that investors are sometimes responding with emotion. They're looking at the markets in terms of what other people are doing and might be overreacting in times of uncertainty. But they're overreacting in a way that's very harmful to their long-term best interest. Behavioral economics helps us to understand the psychology of that, which is great. That's one part of what behavioral economics is all about, is a better understanding of our biases. And it's great for that kind of research. But where behavioral economics is taking us even further is actually giving us new strategies to actually help impact and influence our behavior. So what are things that we can do around pre-commitment, for instance, pledges, for instance, as new tactics to help us stay consistent with our preferences.
And how is contributing to the ordinary user?
Behavioral economics is contributing right now to people, I think, through governments that are developing evidence-based policy. So before we try a new program, either as a taxpayer or as a beneficiary of a program, how do we know it works? How do we know that it has the impact that we want it to? And this is programs like looking at the effectiveness of unemployment insurance. Are people getting the kinds of services that they need? Or are the programs designed in a way that's so complex that people don't even know how to enroll? And it turns out that governments have committed things like significant amount of money to students for universities through sometimes government-sponsored loans, but students are not applying for these because it seems like a very complex process. Behavioral economics helps us to streamline that. But that's on the government side. And on the commercial side, companies are using behavioral economics, sometimes for good, in terms of how do we help our customers save better? How do we help our customers make better investment decisions? How do we help our customers, and this one's one of my favorites, how do we help our customers do a better job of buying insurance, the right kind of insurance that truly fits their needs? So these are examples of behavioral economics being used to help our day-to-day.
And how do you see the use of behavioral economics in Mexico, for example, and in Latin America?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, and it's because it's still very new. It's very new in Mexico. It's very new across Latin America. That said, we do have projects across Latin America. For instance, we're doing a project in Chile helping with reduce the number of people not paying for public transit when they go onto a bus, increasing their likelihood to pay for public transit. And some of the traditional approaches of using more authorities, more police to enforce payment, sometimes that's not necessarily the best route to go in terms of a healthier and happier society. To use those stronger measures, turns out that we can use psychological approaches to help nudge people into things like payment.
Okay, and how do you see it, comparing it with other parts of the world, as the US, Europe?
It's new in many places around the world. The countries that we can look to for having the most leadership right now about the use of behavioral economics would be, for instance, the UK, with its organization, the Behavioral Insights team. They were the first organization to get government sponsorship to actually taking a new approach to developing policy, using the behavioral insights, using the field-based research. In the United States, it's another very big market, and in Canada as well.
Okay, very interesting. And also we were talking about savings to help have a healthier and wealthier life. So how do you see the trends of savings around the world?
Yeah, savings is very challenging for all of us. It has this cost of what we're doing today, and to take our money and to lock it away into long-term savings, for our retirement, but also to make sure that we have money there for a rainy day, big investments like education. So the challenge, though, is it's very difficult for us to make those kinds of commitments to savings. There's actually been some very fascinating neuroscientific research showing that people have as little empathy for their future selves as they do a stranger. And so when we're actually able to overcome that barrier of not having empathy for our future selves, then we're likely to not see savings as something that we surrender for, almost like for a stranger, but instead to benefit our present selves.
Well, very interesting, Kelly. I think it's important to say that this has to be an effort from the governments, the society, and also the companies, right?
Absolutely. Demanding evidence-based approaches, thinking about what is the research, how do we know that this is going to work, is one part of behavioral economics, and it changes very much how both companies and governments design and test their strategies. And then the second part of all of this is the behavioral insights. How can we use what we know about human psychology to develop better programs and services?
And is there a program that you've seen here in Mexico that you're working with that you would like to share with us?
We're currently working with a large bank to help them improve savings amongst Mexicans that don't have that much money to save in the first place. So we're using some new approaches to understand those barriers and to find innovative approaches to help them save. So we're very excited about this project.
Okay, and this has to be through a fintech or something like that?
It's through one of the well-known banks here in Mexico that is very interested in new ways to help their customers succeed.
Okay, and how do you see the potential of this in Mexico? Because we know we have a challenge of financial inclusion.
That's right. I think that behavioral economics will be very helpful for financial inclusion in Mexico, because behavioral economics will bring to life some of the day-to-day challenges that people face, and to bring these innovative approaches, things that bankers might not have thought about before. And we talked earlier about this use of a golden painted coin, and how something as simple as giving customers this coin that they're given these instructions, scratch off a number on this coin. Every time you save, scratch off a number. And you would think, come on, how could something so simple, maybe even silly, have an impact on people? But it turns out that it does. Because we have to remember that saving money, again, there's this like pain of saving, it's very abstract for people. So if we give them, for instance, this coin, it gives them something tangible to hold on to as a visual reminder of the savings that they've done. But the other part of the success that we've seen in experimenting and testing this coin is by scratching off this number, people have a chance to interact with it, to feel a sense of commitment to this process of savings. And then we even see that people want to keep scratching. They want to keep seeing this progress that they're making, the little steps. Because that's what it is. It's these little steps that they can take, but giving them that sense of reward every time they take a little step. And that can lead to new habits and new lifestyle.
Well, we hope to see more advance of this behavioral economics in Mexico with different trends that we were talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly Peters, expert in behavioral economics and founder and CEO of BWorks.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.